Hello, everyone. Today I'll be presenting my research on my thesis. My thesis topic is The Rise of Virtual Learning, How ESL Teachers Use Technology to Promote Engaged Literacy in K-2 Non-Native English Speakers. My name is Hannah Porter, and I am a member of the class of 2022. So an overview of what we will be going over today. So we'll start out talking about introducing my topic and just kind of going over the importance of my research and the relevance of it in today's society. We'll also be looking at the methodology and how I chose to conduct the study and my general research. We'll look at the results of my study and my overall conclusions and findings. I will present some of my final thoughts as I reflect on my process, and I will also provide my contact information and address some acknowledgements that I need to make at the very end. So, to introduce my topic, before COVID-19, I had no idea what I wanted to do my topic on. I remember right before the pandemic hit, I had a meeting about my thesis within the Teaching Fellows cohort because I am a teaching fellow here at Meredith, and I remember almost crying because I just felt like I would never be able to find a topic that I wanted to do because I'm so passionate about so many different aspects of education. So this topic ended up combining two of my passions, and I'm really happy with the way that it all collided. A little background about me: I am a child development major, and I'm also getting my K-6 teaching licensure with a career goal of teaching elementary school students. So my first passion and my first interest is virtual learning. So this obviously became prominent as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, when COVID began affecting our area, I moved home and began to help my fourth grade sister navigate her first online learning experience, whilst also navigating online for me for the first time within college classes. I learned so much, not only from the student standpoint, but I also learned a lot from the perspective of a future educator, since I was able to watch my sister's teacher practice engagement strategies and really figure out virtual learning. My second interest is English as a second language, otherwise known as ESL education. So this interest of mine emerged after I completed a placement in the fall of 2019, where I was able to work and tutor a student who was learning English. This was a first grade student. And I absolutely loved the experience, and I gained a lot from it, but I left that placement feeling like there was so much more I needed to comprehend in order to effectively educate English language learners. And so that topic never really left my mind since. Some additional details of my topic: I chose to focus and really gear my study towards ESL teachers of K-2 students because I'm most interested at the very moment in teaching students within kindergarten through second grade. I chose literacy because I think it is a critical facet of English language and overall English proficiency. And this topic is incredibly important and relevant due to the rise in ESL students that the American public school system is seeing. Also, COVID-19 is going to make an impact for many, many, many years to come, although many of us are beginning to get vaccinated. I know that the school system and this process of schooling in general will be affected for a long time. And so I wanted to be able to contribute my research to that body and that field. So the main question I was really getting at and really hoping to get answered is, how are ESL teachers working with K-2 non-native English-speaking students to promote engaged literacy through virtual learning? And I chose to focus on engaged literacy. That is a subgroup of literacy because literacy is such a broad topic. I probably could have spent years looking at every realm of literacy, but for the purposes of this project, I chose to hone in on a certain category. So you might be wondering, what is engaged literacy? And so at the core, engaged literacy is answering the question of how can we as educators maximize students' interest in and engagement with reading, writing, and other forms of expression. This came from TESOL in 2013. Another study that I found from Cummins in 2011 promoted literacy engagement as an underrated, highly effective tool that can help students have access to a rich print environment. Additionally, Guthrie in 2004 pointed out that literacy engagement promotes literacy components since it encompasses time on task, affect, the depth of cognitive processing, and the active pursuit of literacy activities. Therefore, if ESL teachers implement methods of engaged literacy when teaching non-native English-speaking students, students may, in theory, be more proficient readers and perform better on reading assessments. This photo on the slide highlights the literacy engagement framework as Jim Cummins illustrated it. So Cummins identified print access and literacy engagement as being flip sides of the same coin. If students do not have access to books or reading material, children will have few chances to engage actively with literacy. So you can see that print access or literacy engagement really begins with 4 components: scaffolding meaning, activating prior experience, affirming identity, and extending language. All of this together leads to literacy attainment and mastery within the English language. So this is a really important model for ESL teachers to really know and understand. Looking at my study methodology, the present study examined how ESL teachers promoted engaged literacy through technology resources. The participants completed an online survey, which lasted about 30 minutes when they took it. Prior to the administration of this survey and analysis of results, the researcher obtained consent from every teacher. Before analyzing the results, the researcher hypothesized, that ESL teachers would effectively employ technology to make a positive impact on literacy engagement in non-native English-speaking students. I also hypothesized that ESL teachers would now feel more comfortable with technology and using it due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the emergence of virtual learning. I had 2 survey segments. So with the second survey segment, I hypothesized that there would be differences in how teachers perceived literacy engagement and technology as it related to K2 non-native English-speaking students, since some classrooms have began that transition from all virtual learning to hybrid, which is when students go half in person and half virtually, or Plan A, which is fully in-person instruction. So in terms of my survey, I used Google Forms to send a survey electronically. The first segment of my survey consisted of 15 questions. Looking at its overall design, I developed questions from the resources mentioned in the literature review. Above, you can see engaged literacy, multimodal learning, and academic language. The researcher, also asked questions relating to the educator's interpretations of various terms associated with the literature and about how technology could be helpful in the classroom. Participants also discussed how the effects of COVID-19 have altered teaching practices, and ESL teachers also were able to provide information about how their students have grown in engaged literacy as a result of technology. The end of the first segment marked the beginning of hybrid instruction for many teachers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So then the second segment really focused on a follow-up question that I sent via email. I gave teachers significant amounts of time to answer every segment of the survey, and my follow-up question was, since having students back in the classroom with Plan B learning, do you feel that technology has promoted engaged literacy in your non-native English-speaking students? If yes, can you provide more information about what you were seeing? This map of the state of North Carolina, our state, really looks at where my participants came from. I had 7 total ESL teachers participate, and so I had participants from Pitt County, Wake County, Orange County, Durham County, Lee County, and Franklin County. I had 1 in each county with the exception of Wake County, where I had 2. I obtained the contact information for these teachers through connections that I had with professors at Meredith and teachers that I had connections with throughout my time. I initially introduced myself via email and then followed up about them being a part of the project. Ultimately, all of the 7 teachers chose to participate. And so another important thing to mention is that the participants filled out the survey anonymously, so no names were associated with the data collection. So now we're going to look at the results and we're going to break these down by starting with the overarching themes of my data. When considering the data that has been analyzed in depth, there were many themes that remain prevalent and compelling. There was a high knowledge of academic language and its association with educating K2 non-native English-speaking students. When comparing these three terms, many more knew academic language than multimodal learning and engaged literacy. Technologically speaking, a general amount of technology was implemented in classrooms prior to COVID-19 and virtual learning. Teachers' confidence in their abilities with technology plays a large role in the extent of its presence in the classroom, and this data conveyed the fact that confidence typically varied depending on the context or extenuating circumstances. Specifically, there was a trend in high confidence in meeting the needs of non-native English-speaking students and moderate confidence with utilizing technology in a positive manner prior to COVID-19. All of the participants taught K2 non-native English-speaking students for at least 2 years, which I feel contributed to confidence levels. This graph portrays the confidence levels of ESL teachers to implement technology prior to COVID-19. At the time that this survey was administered, all of the participants said that they were more comfortable with technology now than prior to COVID. You can see I did a scale of 1 to 5. 1 meant not very comfortable and 5 was extremely comfortable. So we have no ones. None of my participants said 1, but you have some in every other category. Some additional themes regarding particular technology resources. The majority of participants claimed that videos and images were incredibly impactful. Within my follow-up question in the second survey segment, there were extremely varied opinions on how COVID-19 has impacted engaged literacy in non-native English-speaking students within kindergarten through 2nd grade. 3 of the 7 participants chose to take part in the second survey segment, since their circumstances applied with returning to the hybrid learning setting. So 1 of the participants said that they felt it had been very positive, 1 said it had been very negative, and 1 said that it was too soon to tell and that therefore it was inconclusive. So I think this quote really sums up my overall findings, kind of what my data showed me. It says, engaged literacy has the potential to more effectively promote engaged literacy among K2 non-native English-speaking students, but it can only be accomplished in the right context. One primary hindrance of this ideal context is accessibility. Many students do not have the same chances to learn and practice engaged literacy due to gaps in language and internet access. Essentially, if virtual learning was more comprehensive and equitable, the results could have looked a lot different. Were my hypotheses proven upon analyzing the data? They were and they weren't. So my initial first 2 hypotheses were affirmed since the participants exhibited a higher comfort level with utilizing technology due to COVID-19. ESL teachers also demonstrate differences in the perception of literacy engagement and technology since classrooms switched from virtual to Plan B learning. A lot of them did while I was conducting the survey. However, the one hypothesis that this data contradicted is that there were way more negative connotations between engaged literacy and technology than I anticipated. In conclusion, I gained a multitude of information that will enable me to effectively promote literacy engagement within the English language learners that I encounter in my classroom one day. So I was able to look at COVID-19 as it related to the education system. I gained knowledge of educational jargon and familiarized myself with other elements of ESL education. This will in turn help me to collaborate with ESL teachers more effectively. I also made connections with current ESL teachers through my study. I acquired technology resources that I will be able to use one day, and overall established connections between engaged literacy and technology. There were, however, some study limitations. I had a much lower teacher participation than I wanted to have. My original goal was for 25 teachers to partake in this project, but due to COVID-19 and the influx of newness and adjustment that teachers had to undergo, I only was able to really make contact with 7 and find 7 that were willing to participate. But I think this really allowed me to take a quality over quantity approach and break down the data thoroughly and intentionally. I think also, particularly within the second survey segment, there were evolving circumstances since COVID-19 is constantly changing all the time. I think this could definitely be looked at more in depth now. I wonder if now, if I went back and did the study, if there would be a difference versus in November when I did this part of the study. And the time factor in general imposed this limitation as well. And this is definitely a topic that is continuing to progress, so it's always going to be relevant. In summary, I think from my project, you really are able to get a sense of how technology can correlate with engaged literacy as it relates to K2 non-native English-speaking students. Technology resources have proven to be very effective, but the right context and circumstances are necessary in order for them to work and in order for them to really help students grow within the realm of literacy. Here are my acknowledgements. I want to thank Dr. Toole, who was my thesis advisor and is also the director of the Teaching Fellows Program at Meredith. She has been nothing but supportive throughout my endeavor, and I could not have done it without her assistance and her mentorship. I'd also like to thank the faculty members within my major of child development and my K-6 licensure area, because their content and all that I learned through their classes helped inform me as I conducted this research and communicated with teachers. Dr. McMillan, the honors program director, was incredibly helpful as I submitted my thesis and was really there for me at the end of the game. Personally, my family has been nothing but cheerleaders for me. They heard me constantly talk about this research. They gave me advice and helped me where they could, and I could not have done it without them. My Meredith friends and peers are amazing, and a lot of them actually helped me proofread my thesis at the end and were really interested in hearing about my research, and I'm so thankful for them every day. Thank you so much for your time and for your willingness to listen to more information about my study and all the data that I found. If you have any questions at all that come up, feel free to contact me at heporter@email.meredith.edu. Thank you so much.